So welcome to our webinar today on making UDL connections to empower educators. Myself, Kristen Leslie, and Linda Daly and Rose Roscoe will be presenting today on behalf of the Special Education Technology Center. And as we were mentioning just a few minutes ago, the SETC is located in Ellensburg, Washington. And so this session was actually created for the UDL IRN conference, which was supposed to happen in April, but is now going to be a virtual conference in June. So we'll be doing this again for that conference. All right, so as we're introducing ourselves, we'd love for you all to put your role in education in the chat window so we can see the different roles in education that are represented here today. I am the director of the Special Education Technology Center, and my background is as an occupational therapist and an assistive technology specialist. Let's see, we have Rose.
Oh, you want me to introduce myself? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Rose, Rose Roscoe. I'm an occupational therapist also, and assistive technology specialist, and I work both for Bellevue School District half-time and also for SETC part-time. So that's what brings me here today.
And my name is Linda Daly, and I'm an AT specialist with the Special Education Technology Center. My background is actually as a computer programmer, and then I became a speech assistant in a school district, and that's how I started doing assistive technology, and now I'm working for the Special Ed Tech Center.
Okay, and so in the chat, we have Carrie Spokes, the Special Education Service Director in Okanagan, and we have several of you in Okanagan, a middle school resource room teacher, a high school teacher. We have another SPED administrator.
Resource room K2.
Case manager. Someone wanting to speak up?
Resource room K2 inclusion, that's in Okanagan.
Okay. Just looking through the chat, we have elementary resource room teacher in Issaquah. We have an AT specialist and an AT resource center at Western Washington University. Natalie's here. And we have an instructional coach for AT and AAC and special ed digital curriculum from Evergreen. So lots of folks here in different roles.
Okay, great. So, and as we are doing this today, we want it to be an interactive session. And so please feel free to join in either verbally or in the chat. And we have a couple of links we want to share with you. One we'll be actively using today, and that's the Padlet. And the other is a Google folder where we've put all the resources. So I'm just going to quickly go out and show those to you. So here is the Padlet. And if you can actually pull that up, I think Kristen's going to put that link in the chat, because this is a place where when we reflect, and we're going to give you some specific places that we're going to have reflection time, we'd like you to share in the Padlet if you're comfortable. And then also, we just wanted to show you that the resources we are showing you today, we do have in this folder. So, and that link will be in the presentation. And we will send the presentation to you, but also we just wanted you to know that if we went back to the last slide, you can actually pull it up if you want to right now. I think Kristen's putting this in the chat also. Is that correct, Kristen? That the bit.ly?
Yes,
so
I got the bit.ly and the Padlet link.
Okay, great. So the bit.ly is the presentation, and then the Padlet is where we'll ask you to respond. So those are the links we wanted to talk about. And then I think Chris is going to share a little bit about the Special Ed Technology Center.
So some of you are already familiar, but just to recap, the Special Education Technology Center, we're of course in Washington State. We're a state-funded organization to provide assistive technology support to teachers, specialists, families, paraprofessionals, and administrators. There's also a second grant in Washington at UW, WATAP, the Washington Assistive Technology Project. And so we have 2 projects in our state that address assistive technology, and we do a little bit different. We have a little bit different roles. So in our services, we provide consultation to school teams on assistive technology and augmentative and alternative communication. We have a technology lending library, and then we have lots of professional development, which you'll be able to hear about today. Okay, so this is one of my favorite quotes of the year. It comes from a book called The Listening Leader. The full title, can you see the book? There we go. The full title is The Listening Leader, Creating the Conditions for Equitable School Transformation, and it's by Shane Saphir. And we have the quote here: school transformation arises from micro interactions of each day. And what she refers to is that we all have interactions throughout our day. And that interaction that the teacher has with the student over a missing assignment, the interaction that an administrator might have with a teacher over strategies, teaching strategies. And that these micro interactions we have with each other and with the student, with the parent, with administrators are all so important because they can be planting seeds for future ideas, for new ideas that we have that can spark change. And I feel like this is particularly important for this topic around UDL, where many of us see a vision of UDL and we see some ways in which to implement, but we need to be laying the groundwork, building those relationships, what the book calls relational capital, so that our ideas can take root and grow. So today we're going to show many examples of what we've done in Washington State. And we wanted you to know that behind those examples are lots of micro interactions with teams. And that's how we change practices and perception over time. So I love these pictures of these stacked rocks. And I just wanted you guys to remember that our journeys are all different, right? So whether you're in the classroom level, or you're looking at a district level, or you're looking at your building level, or we're looking statewide, we're all going to have some different experiences. And we were thinking about how UDL is first and foremost a framework that provides us with options. And so certainly in implementing UDL, we have many options and many ways to do things. So today you might see 1 or 2 or even 5 ideas that you think I'd love to implement. And so just know that as you take those ideas and begin to work with them, they will create something unique, because that will spark other ideas, and it will all look different in how we implement UDL, and that is okay. Our goal here is to spark change and spark ideas, and we're all going in a similar direction. Okay, so our agenda today, this just kind of outlines what we're doing. That we're first going to have a little activity that is, who are you as a learner? We're going to look at UDL implementation tips through Katie Novak's infograph on UDL, which she allows us to present today. And we're going to look at professional development activities that SETSI's done over 2019, 2020. And those are activities to support UDL and assistive technology. And then we're going to give some examples of rubber meets the road, examples from the field of UDL implemented. And that's where a lot of ideas, I think, will be sparked. Then we're going to have a little reflection time and goal setting, and then have a little bit of time for discussion and question and answers.
Okay.
So just to be clear on our learning objectives today, we want participants to be able to identify 1 professional development strategy to support educators with UDL implementation, and then have you target 2 innovative ideas to share with your district or agency to support UDL implementation.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about this activity called Who Are You as a Learner? And I originally created this to deliver in an in-person environment. So how it works is for each of these slides, you either move to the left side of the room or to the right side of the room, depending on if your answer is, for the green arrow, I prefer writing or saying my thoughts and ideas, or the blue arrow, I prefer expressing ideas by drawing and creating art. So I want you to imagine how it might look if you do it live, but for the purposes of today, I created a poll so that we could get an idea of what people's preferences were. So I'm going to invite Linda to bring up this poll. And this is going to identify what your learning preferences is as educators. And this is something you can also do with your students to see what are their learning preferences and how is that impacting your lesson design. So I want you to just take a minute and read each of those and just answer A or B. So just one answer for each of those questions.
As you're doing this, I stole this idea from Rose and did it with administrators, and I had quite a few people standing in the middle saying, I don't want to choose one. I want both.
So I think this is really interesting because things that, normally I think are UDL and progressive, like I'm one of these creative people, like, okay, UDL thing, let him draw or do something creative or media. But that most of you said you preferred writing or saying your thoughts and ideas. So again, keeping in mind, there's ideas out there, but there's also preferences on where students are most comfortable learning. And then like small groups, how many times do we, put kids into groups where look at most of you prefer to learn by yourself? Or looking at number 3, again, I prefer using technology and multimedia, and I'm like, oh, this is great. We're going to give you digital books. Yeah, most of you prefer reading and highlighted a printed book page. This is consistent every time I give this, which is pretty amazing. And then just the organization. Do we want flexibility and choices and options like we think of in UDL? Most people are still more comfortable doing tasks in a more organized and sequential way. So just, it's kind of an eye-opener, like, wow, that really helps us know that we need to provide options, but knowing that students might not all be ready for the same thing at the same time, including us. So that was just a quick little experiential on that. So do I end the polling, Linda? There, I'm going to go ahead and end it.
There you go. Do you want to share the results?
Oh yeah, I was looking at them like, sorry, I thought they were showing.
Well, I think they were on my extra screen,
Okay,
but
good.
So, and if you want to see the whole thing, there's a little slider bar on the right that you can pull down and see.
Yeah, so it's just kind of an interesting list on how you can get people to have an experience of who they are as a learner with a quick little activity. And again, movement's always nice if you can do it in person. So great, thanks, Linda. So we can go on to slide 12.
Okay. Okay.
So now it wouldn't be a UDL presentation without talking a little bit about UDL. So mostly we'll just give a quick overview and then we're going to go into more examples. But this is a great infographic created by the guru, Katie Novak, who is UDL everything. She's a leader, an instructor, and very dynamic educator. So what I like about this this is only the top half of the infographic, but that lower half where you see it says expert learners and it has the picture of the 2 students, you'll notice the variability. Each of them has like a line, the blue and the green lines representing their learning style, strengths, and weaknesses. And oftentimes we think of our kids in special ed as, okay, they have these strengths and these weaknesses and we have to write an IEP to them. Yet here are 2 average students. These are not students identified in special ed. So the point of this is that when you design, if you can collaborate with general ed teachers, every single student in that classroom can benefit from UDL options because they're all going to have their strengths and challenges, and that they're going to fit right in with our students who need the same kinds of things, only maybe more or less in those areas. So the multiple options is really good for all, is the moral of that. So then I'd like to show you the lower half of this infographic. And in this picture, you get to see some implementation ideas. And what you're going to notice is that there may be a lot of these ideas that you're already using in the classroom. and that you might even learn some new and more options that you could try. And so in this presentation, we're going to show a lot of examples, practical examples of how we're using UDL tools and strategies in the classroom to set the stage for inclusion. So then I just want to dive down into each of those sections a little bit more. Because that graphic was so small, I just put it on a slide so you could read those more easily. So as you look at these engagement tip options, you'll notice that these tips will try to help your students take ownership of their learning and provide the just right challenge with plenty of opportunities for interaction and feedback. And then we go on to representation, implementation tips. And notice that these suggestions are multisensory. They provide interactive ideas. They're scaffolded to student ability. And they include modeling by the teacher and other students. So students need to know why their learning is relevant and how it's connected to other learning. I think sometimes you forget some of those points from a teacher perspective. It's not just about choices, it's about how those students are relating to the learning. So I really felt like these are great little quick tips. If you're going to give someone a short overview of UDL, you've got that great infographic, and just helping them look at a few of those implementation ideas is a great way to get someone on board with UDL as just the first step. So I just wanted to share that with you as something you can reuse with others as you're sharing about UDL. Okay, oh, one more. I forgot action and expression. Okay, so it's important that students have multiple choices and options for how they express themselves and stay organized so that they can find the method that works best for them. And the other part of this is you'll see as students receive feedback and reflect on their own learning, they'll be motivated to improve their work. One of the things you're going to notice in this presentation, even though it's only an hour, we absolutely wanted to have time for reflection there. And because we found it's important for adults as well as students to have time to process what they've learned and reflect on it. All right. Good way, Linda.
So the next thing we want to do is move on to some ideas for professional development. And we will be sharing some of the things that SETC has done or supported other people in doing. But before we get started with those, we actually wanted to give you a chance to share some of the things you're doing with professional development. So the question we want you to think about is, what methods of professional development are you using in your district? So, or have you seen at the statewide level? And what we would like to do is have you either respond in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, we would love to have you respond in the Padlet. And so if we pull up the Padlet here, you can see that we've put the reflection 1, what methods of professional development are you using in your state or district? So if you have pulled up the Padlet, you can just click on the plus and add your posts to that column. And as you put them in the chat, Kristen's going to try to keep up with you and put them in here too. And if you are most comfortable just speaking it, we didn't actually give that as an option, but you could just share it out too. So we are open to that. And then we'll add it to the Padlet for you. So it looks like Evergreen is using a variety of modalities. And somebody said they're doing actually in-class instruction with staff and students. Okay, Evergreen is doing live professional development, webinars, coaching, watching videos. And if you have any videos or information you have found that you want to share, that feel free to put that in the chat or put that in this too. Like if you want to list some of the videos that you're using, that's great. because that's what we're hoping, is that we can see what everybody's doing. So let's see, in-class instruction with staff and students, webinars, book studies, staff training on PD days, Teams webinars, in-person classes, district workshop days, creating more on-demand trainings, tip sheets. These are great ideas. Webinars, conferences, in-district PD with presenters, ESD trainings, bringing in speakers on half days for whole district online, Zoom meetings, webinars, ESD courses, book studies. That's great. So all right. Webinars, ESD book courses, good. Co-teaching, so good. Oh, good. Somebody's even already gone on to the reflection. That's great. So to the next reflection. So thank you guys. I love it that you guys are using the Padlet. Thank you. So, okay. Does anybody want to add anything else to reflection 1 before Kristen shares some things that Setsy's doing? And when I ask the question, I really do want you to have time to answer. So that's why I'm not moving on right away. So, okay, Kristen, do you want to go ahead and share some things?
So some of what I was going to share, you've captured in your reflection. But we thought we'd share the variety of ways that the Special Ed Tech Center has supported through professional development. So we have conferences that are in person, but we made a great effort this year and last to have our conference be remote so that those in other regions could also join. We have regional and statewide AT meetings. So there's 9 regions that gather in their own region, and then we connect all through Zoom twice a year. We have classes that are also in person and online. Our webinars, which are typically at noon and 3:30, with some AT chatters at 11:30. We record the webinars, and so that way folks have a way to view it later on our YouTube channel. We have some customized UDL trainings and coaching for districts so that we can personalize that training to what that district needs. We have done some UDL professional learning communities where we've done some book studies. I mentioned the AT chatters, and that's where folks from around the state can get together and talk about specific topics and share ideas and resources around that topic. We've had Tuesday tip videos this year that go out on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel that are 1 to 2 minute clips on AT and AAC. And then we do technology collaborations with school teams, and that's around a specific student or a classroom, and that's brainstorming and planning and troubleshooting assistive technology. And throughout all of these activities, we keep universal design principles in mind and are working to model those principles.
I'll just say too that sometimes we do real-time training, like after a technology collaboration, it often leads us to create some custom trainings for the group that we just consulted with. So, and that's how it happens, you know, out in the field too. You meet with the teacher and that produces a need for something and then you provide it. So we do a lot of that too, which is fun because then we can customize it for different people's needs.
Okay. So here's another chance for you to respond. And I love that people are already starting to do this reflection. So name one idea that you would like to implement. And again, we'll go out to the Padlet so you can respond on that. And look, people have already been doing it. I love that. So thank you guys. So if you want to keep just responding to that, it's just name one of the ideas you've heard that you would like to implement, or an idea you haven't heard but you know about that you would like to implement. So,
and this could be with your grade level team. This could be with your whole building or your whole district. So whatever role you're in and you're thinking of, it could be at any level.
And I'm just giving people a chance to respond a little bit before I share out the responses. Oh, and look, it looks like we've got lots of great responses. So family, paraeducator, community professional development on AAC using Project Core, co-teaching, coaching site visits to other locations. Couple different people have put down coaching and co-teaching. I just started doing a PD calendar for staff, and I would like to keep that up and add 2 times per month tips. That's fun. So the thing I like about those is they're usually very doable tips, and they come in and you can get the little chunks, you know, when it's just 2 times a month, it's a chunk that's easily doable as far as taking in. So I like that. On-demand modules for clock hours, create on-demand materials with a way to give educators credit for watching recorded sessions. We were just talking about that at one of the meetings we were at, weren't we, Rose? So yeah, inclusion and co-teaching, best practices and strategies, and site visits. So at this point, does anybody want to ask about any of these? Because we've asked you to share, but some people may want you to expand on that. Does anybody want to ask any questions to anybody who has put up any of those ideas? And again, you can feel free to put it in the chat or you can speak. So, lots of great ideas. And this Padlet will be there for you to go back and look at. So
I just have a comment. I'm thinking about the book studies, and SETSI has launched quite a few book studies. We have 2 going right now. We've had 1 or 2 going almost all year. And I just find that it's a great way to stimulate conversation around a topic and best practice. And I'm thinking, how can we duplicate that in like smaller PLC groups in my district or other districts and get people at the grassroots level really dialoguing and talking amongst themselves? So I think it's a great first step to get people on fire about UDL and the idea of how do you implement and what does that look like? And so I love that, how that's going.
yeah. So, and actually we have an example of that in our examples from the field. So that will go right into that. So we'll just go to examples from the field. Oh, whoops, I see the chat. Is there anything I need to stop for, Kristen?
I'm just copying and getting in the Padlet. I was trying to add it to your screen, not mine. So now.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, its book studies have helped our staff speak the same language by clarifying vocabulary we typically use with one definition. So that, yeah, getting on the same page.
Yeah, that's great. So, okay. If anybody wants anything else, I'm just going to give a couple, you know, a little bit more time because I don't want to move past this because we want you to have time to really think about it. Okay. Okay.
All right, so this is Rose. I'm going to share some UDL examples, and my colleagues will share some UDL examples from the field across Washington State in both urban and rural districts. And these are concrete examples of how we've used UDL tools, strategies, and environments that we've run across in our work.
Okay.
So I'm going to start off with some examples from Bellevue School District where I'm currently working half-time. And Microsoft Translator has been out for a few years, and I've been trying to implement it, but it wasn't until this last year that I really got traction in Bellevue. And it kind of all started because last August we had 4 Leader Institute days, and we had a new hire on the leadership team who was hearing impaired. And so the night before, they're like, well, is there something we can set up for this person? So we set up Microsoft Translator, and I had another general ed instructional tech person help me with that. And we started out with just using the headsets with the microphone and plugging it into the laptop. And anyone that presented, including our superintendent, they all had to put on these headsets, right? But we made it work. It was showing up there. We were so proud of ourselves. Well, so that led into how can we make this more efficient? Because they were literally having to wear a headset with a mic and hold a PA mic, like 2 mics. So what we did is I worked with our IT department, and we figured out a way to have Microsoft Translator work through our classroom PA systems. They're called light speed systems. So teachers had little microphones around their neck, and they could just continue to talk in those, and it could be set up to, you know, use with Microsoft Translator. The other need was to use it in like big presentations room, like gyms. So we got that figured out too. So literally in the first 2 months of school, we had like 6 requests for curriculum nights set up with translator support. So we did that. We had 12 different teachers that piloted Translator in the classroom. And we had a student with a cochlear implant and a hearing aid that had been trying to figure out how to get this set up probably for like 3 or 4 months, even the prior year. And with IT support, we finally figured that out. So that was huge. And then one other way we used it in leadership team presentations, sometimes people felt like the presentation translator window was distracting to the PowerPoint. So we set up a separate big monitor with translator, and it had, you know, translations going on in the full screen, and then the PowerPoint on a separate screen. So we had dual monitors going, and we do that for every team, every leadership meeting now. So really it was this partnership between IT and AT that really made this come to life, and helped our IT department take ownership. So with that, I wanted to show you a few more examples of how this was used. So I collaborated with a couple ELL facilitators at the high school level, and they were having these family coffee hours with students and parents. So they said, Rose, can you come and help us set up Translator? So I did, and at this point they were still using the headset. But what was thrilling was we had a full room. We must have had 20 to 25 people with students and parents. Everybody either had a laptop or a personal, you know, device, a phone or an iPad set up with Translator. And we had people listening to what was being said and seeing it in multiple languages right on their own personal device. So the parents were really thrilled with this, and the teachers at the front of the room were just like, wow, we're getting this across to everybody. And for an ELL teacher, that's their goal. So that was exciting. And then we tried it in the next slide. This is a special ed parent night. So again, big group of people in a big kind of gym type classroom. And you can see the presenter in the front is holding a handheld mic, and she's got the headsets on. So again, this was like September, so we were still working through that. But again, what we did is I helped her set up a presentation translator, which was one learning. Then I brought like, I think 6 extra little iPad minis with Microsoft Translator. So if there were any parents that didn't have a personal device, I would have it ready to go for them. And then I just went around the room and helped parents set up so they could all connect to the conversation. So that was also really successful. And we did that several more times this year as well. And then this tool, this came out of an effort. We were invited by an elementary school to do a UDL presentation. And as we started collaborating with them for this 2-hour class, they said, you know, well, we have this idea. We want to have stations set up so teachers can choose where they want to go. So instead of my partner Kathy and I teaching the class, it turned out that we planned these 6 sessions. We only taught one of the 6 stations. As you can see, it was the purple representation one. But we had the teachers in that school embracing other UDL options. Some were technology, some were not technology. So we met together at the beginning of the class. We introduced them to this UDL menu and talked briefly about UDL. Then for an hour and a half, we broke off into these stations, and teachers could pick where they wanted to go and how long they wanted to stay. And then the last 20 minutes, we regathered to kind of debrief, share about their learning experiences, have some reflection time like we've talked about, and then how are they going to put this into action in their classroom. So that was really cool. And then shortly after that, I got invited on the next slide to collaborate and present on UDL at a middle school level. Can you go back one slide, Linda?
Oh, sorry, yep.
So this is the middle school menu. So instead of 6 choices, we just had 4. And in this case, it was myself, kind of the technology teacher librarian, and then 2 other tech specialists in the school. So we did all tech tools, but they all took ownership. Instead of me teaching all these tools, I just picked one, and I helped them all pick some they were comfortable with. And these are tools that every teacher and student has access to, yet, there was a lot that everyone needed to learn about these because they weren't all using these. So that one we did in an hour and a half. So we had 1 hour of stations, again, 4 stations, teachers rotated at their own pace. And I think it was really successful because we kept it short in the beginning, brief overview of UDL, then they really got to dig into tools and as teachers own their own learning and pace their own learning. So now you can go to the next slide. And then, so this is how we just had them again, think about how are they going to use the tool. We had them actually consider a student as their focus. So as they went through and picked their learning stations, they had a student in mind, and then, how are they going to utilize this tool? So on the back side of each of those menus was 4 boxes that said strategy or tool. So they could write what station they went to, what was the tool, and how might they use that. So they were taking notes during their rotation time. So the links aren't live in this copy, but I do have these 2 documents in the Google Drive that we gave you. And these are the full 2-sided UDL learning menus that I just talked to you about. So you can take those. I have permission from both teachers that you can take them and adapt them to your own use if you ever want to try this.
Okay.
Okay, and then this one, I thought I'd go on a little different tangent and just talk about the environment, UDL classroom environment examples. And these pictures came out of a learning walk at one of our secondary schools called International School. And I never get invited to math stuff, but they said, can you come and observe our math classes? I'm like, okay, look for UDL math. So one of the teachers had a lot of great examples going on. So in the upper left, you can see a standing table, and she ordered it for one student, but she said, you know what, I'd love to have a whole pod of 4 or 5 of these, and a group of students could go, stand at those tables as one of the breakout groups. So we talked about standing tables. She did have, I think, 5 or 6 of these wobble stools that you can see, the girl sitting in that green wobble stool. These are middle school kids, so the wobble stools aren't just for elementary. I mean, here's some secondary kids that are enjoying it. So again, how do we keep them engaged and active and give them choices in positioning? And then what you see with the rainbow colored sheets, I love this scaffolded activity because what happened is we started with a math activity in a very simple format in the orange on the far left. And then as you progress from left to right, the activities got progressed to be more and more difficult. And so students that couldn't do the ones on the far right, they started left, and maybe they'd go through orange, yellow, yellow, and goldenrod. But other students might be progressing quickly and go all the way to the right to the pink. But the point is, everyone had something to do, and they all felt like they could engage at whatever level was appropriate for them. So that was a really cool thing. And I was thinking to myself, she had these all printed, so they were like worksheets, but we could take the same idea and adapt it with some digital tools, because the issue with this one is it might not be accessible to certain students with disabilities that might need it with larger print or a way to type into it instead of write. So the same idea, could be taken to that level. And then you can see the little colored sheets where you can, again, slip in different color-coded activities into the plastic slip covers. Excuse me. And then up on the walls, these are wipe-off boards that are giant posters that she just had up on the windows. So again, students would gather in groups and stand around a poster and all write in them. So, just some simple ways to get movement, to give choices, to get kids writing in groups in different ways, and just adding options.
So, Rose, would you like me to skip ahead and talk about Freeman and just give you your voice a chance to take a break? And then we'll come back to the rest of yours.
Yeah, let me take a drink.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll mute myself for a minute.
So we'll come back to some more great ideas that Rose has from around the state of Washington, but I'll just talk about the Freeman School District for a minute. Freeman is a rural school district in Eastern Washington, south of Spokane. It serves 906 students, and Kristen and I met one of their teachers at a UDL conference that was here in Spokane, and she was really excited about this and wanted to try it out. And so she was actually doing her principal internship that year. And so we said, we will come alongside of you and support you. And we also had a UDL expert who was a Whitworth professor, Cindy Cornelia. And so we said, we'll come along and support you as you do a book study and introduce UDL to the Freeman School District. So she was at the middle school, and she initially wanted to just kind of pick and choose the teachers that she thought would be on board with this. But her principal encouraged her to just introduce it to the whole staff and let them choose who wanted to do it. And she was so surprised. Every single middle school teacher wanted to do it. And so they began a year-long book study and implementation of UDL. It was collaborating and supporting each other in biweekly meetings. They used UDL Now by Katie Novak as the book study they did. And they were learning the UDL principles through exploration and trying them out at the same time. So it was really fun to be a part of that. And then they were recognizing the challenges and problems and solving them right along the way. So as a small district, and a rural district, they came up with three main barriers as they had looked at it. They thought they were going to have time. First of all, they had no time in their schedule for collaboration. So the way they solved that was they actually all agreed to do voluntary 40-minute biweekly meetings, and they did these throughout the entire year. And then one of their barriers was actually culture. Their traditional community and traditional classrooms it was very important to their families that their students were graded. They really liked to see A's. So this way of learning and doing some things that maybe weren't so much about the grade, that was really breaking out of the box for both the parents, the teachers, and the students. And then they also thought technology was going to be their barrier because they had fairly old computers in 2 labs, and they had 2 computers on wheels for 10 classrooms. They were scheduled for a rollout of one-to-one Chromebooks the next year. Interestingly, technology did not become, in the end, it was a non-barrier. It was a non-issue because they didn't end up doing what they thought they initially were going to do. Their first goal was just to say, let's make text more accessible. But they really let the teachers drive the direction they went. And the teachers actually went straight to, let's give options, let's open it up for the students. And so they went much deeper than that. And so actually technology wasn't even an issue. It wasn't a barrier, but it wasn't even an issue. At the end, they did a survey with the teachers. They actually did this 7 months in and then at the end. And they just wanted to get some of their observation and insights. And so these were we thought these were pretty informative and interesting. They said, I thought it would be chaos, but instead the students were just really engaged. And UDL doesn't seem to consider students' weaknesses, and it assumes a certain level of maturity in students. I was afraid the students would be all over the place, but even the kids who typically struggle with behaviors were on task. And students are moving more and thinking more for themselves. So the whole year-long experiment was, it was a great book study. It was a great introduction to UDL. If you want to know more about this particular one, we actually did a webinar on it last year. And so we have a link to that webinar on our recorded webinars. So if you want to know more about how this went for them and how they did it, you can go to that. So, okay. So Rose, how are you doing? Okay, you're muted though. Okay, you're not muted. Yes, you are muted. There you go.
Got it. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly talk about Lake Washington, neighboring school district to Bellevue. They were rolling out a UDL tool at the elementary level named Clicker 7, which is multimedia software. And what they did is they purchased a district-wide site license for elementary, and they convinced their general ed people that this was a tool for all students, not just special ed students, which was really great because it normalized the tool. And then their assistive technology team coordinated the software rollout and did trainings that were offered for both paraeducators and staff. So you can see some screenshots and some trainings they did. And one of the most recent courses was exciting because it was over 50% general education staff, which I think is awesome. And one other fun thing they did is to integrate the UDL concepts into all trainings. The AT specialist created a clicker book about UDL basics, and they use that in their training. So they were pretty creative in how they implemented that. And then I just have a short testimonial by their AT specialist. There's two of them, but Taylor Fu gave me this quote that Clicker 7's become a wonderful tool in the tool belt of our elementary teachers and staff. Clicker 7 helps support our efforts to continually provide multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement with its built-in audio feedback, picture support, voice notes, and just right level of support using the range of Clicker set. I was privileged to have district-wide copies of Clicker in my prior school district in Kent, and I was able to get 50 copies purchased in Bellevue this last year. But it is really a great tool as far as scaffolding and having something to meet every student. So anyway, that was a great thing going on there. And then here's a young man that I just kind of is the epitome of inclusion and UDL. What does that look like? So this is my friend Karan Veer. He's 23 years old and he has cerebral palsy. And he is passionate about pursuing a career in film editing. He loves to give speeches to tell a story, and he wants to help people with disabilities. So, and his mantra is that he believes people with disabilities can do anything. And he has a little joke that he wants to be super rich. But as you can see there, he actually had a 30-minute meeting with Lieutenant Governor Cyrus Habib, who is visually impaired. And it was really neat because we thought, usually you have a 10-minute meeting if you're lucky. And he had a great time telling his needs and advocating there at that. And then just this next slide, he actually launched his own business. So he has his own a business license now, and his pillars are film editing, consulting, and speaking. So just what a great example of a young man who's nonverbal. He uses eye gaze to communicate. He has the little glasses you see are kind of a head mouse with a light beam. So he delivers presentations, he navigates his computer, and just he's very inspirational when we think about what students can accomplish and how can they be included. So anyway, he's been doing a lot of work for SETC. He's done, I think, 3 different webinars, and currently he's hosting an AAC talk series, which is kind of like a chat group for AAC users and their families, and educators have been joining us as well. So hopefully you'll get a chance to meet him someday. And again, just a real inspirational guy.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rose. I'm going to move on past Freeman's slides and go, whoops, back to Richland. And Kristen's going to share.
Okay, so the Special Education Technology Center had a request from Richland School District in Central Washington for a UDL training. And so Linda and I got prepared thinking we were going to be visiting and training teachers and specialists. And we got there and it was all administrators of all levels, all the way to the top. So the needs of the group were very different from what we had prepared. And so we had to be flexible, and we had to use our ears and eyes to assess what was happening and respond to the needs. And so we provided options, and we let them direct their own professional development by allowing them to have their discussions that really drove the professional development. So instead of approaching it in a fixed way of what we had prepared and what we were comfortable with, we had to be quite vulnerable and really have open-ended questions and discussions to really meet the need. And that led to a far more meaningful and personal training with people really engaged in looking at their own district and UDL. And so we know when people can direct their own professional development. I loved what Rose talked about the sessions or the teams. What did you call it? Anyway, the groups where educators could direct their own own training, but also to not be so fixed in what we've planned, to go with what is meaningful to the group that we're providing professional development to.
Okay. So we have shared several different ways, and you have shared several different ways that we can do professional development, how UDL can look. And we know that each of you are coming from different roles. We saw all those roles that you have. So, and so we understand that coming from the different roles, different parts of this presentation are going to speak to you and resonate with you. So we wanted to ask 3 questions, and we don't expect you to answer all 3. We want you to answer the question that really resonates with you. So as you look at these 3 questions, how can you leverage district leaders to be UDL coaches? Or how can you facilitate UDL collaboration among educators? Or what is an example of UDL in action in your state or district? And so as you think about those questions, again, we'd like you to respond. And again, you can do it in the chat and Kristen can put it over, or you can do it in the Padlet, and the questions will be in the Padlet. So, and that we actually put them as 3 separate questions so that you could just go down below the question you want to answer. So 3A is how can you leverage district leaders to be UDL coaches? 3B, how can you facilitate UDL collaboration among educators? And 3C, what is an example of UDL in action in your state or district? So, and I see people answering, so thanks. Kristen, do you want to share some of these out? Oh, you're on mute. Okay. I'll go ahead and share because I'm not sure that Kristen's aware that she's still on mute. So
Thank you, Linda. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
The
Yeah.
chat over, and then I was trying to talk while I was getting the chat over.
So, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were still getting the chat over. So I was thinking. So, how can you leverage district leaders to be UDL coaches? So highlighting tools the district already owns and expanding on their use to provide equity across the district without extra expense other than training time. That's always good when we don't have extra expense, right? That's, we know that that's always helpful. Bellevue School District provide PD on UDL to district leaders and then attend ongoing leadership meetings to collaborate and suggest UDL implementation strategies. For instance, just volunteered to meet with our science curriculum director to review the accessibility of her content in OneNote. Can it be accessed with a screen reader? Do students need a digital book supplement through Bookshare, etc.? So, and then classroom examples of it being used in PD. You can leverage that to use to get district leaders to be UDL coaches. An opportunity to be introduced to what UDL is not, and a profession like through a professional development of a Bookshare. So, and then how can you facilitate UDL collaboration among educators? I like the idea of allowing educators to choose what they participate in. If they experience it themselves, this seems like a great launching place for them to go further with UDL in their classroom. And the PLC meetings, UDL focus, and through my role as an inclusion SPED teacher. And then an example of UDL in action in your state or district, we have Snap and Read and Co-Writer available for all students and staff. The special ed staff collaborates with their general peers using the Goalbook app for many resources, and there are many schools that use the co-teaching model. And use of the online Microsoft tools training is provided to all special ed students to complement training that is already happening in their tech classes. This promotes all student inclusion in use in general ed class group projects. Co-teaching with one general ed teacher and one special ed teacher in the classroom. So I think those are all great ways to do that. So we actually want to give a chance for all of you to be able to ask questions of us or of you. So that's actually what we're going to do at the very end. So I think what makes sense is we'll go ahead, and the next thing we were going to do was just give some thoughts about what we have learned, and then we'll give you guys a chance to ask questions of each other and us. Does that sound like a good plan, Rose and Kristen?
Yes.
That's good.
Okay.
All right. So we're thinking about what have we learned at SETC, what has gone well, what can we improve upon, and how will this inform our future planning to serve the state of Washington?
Right. So I know for me, we just a second, I will get my thoughts together here. So one of the things was don't assume who will be interested. So that Freeman group, we were surprised. So really make it open to whoever, and then share with them right where they are, start where they are. But be patient and spread the excitement, but be aware that it might take people a while to get used to it and to get on board with it. But be patient while you're doing that. And then it's important to get UDL started at the teacher pre-service level, because that's where it's going to start to really permeate education. And so that's something that we have appreciated with the professor at Whitworth that is actually teaching it to the pre-service teachers, and also has been teaching it to college staff. So they see the importance of it in all of their classes too. So those are some of the things that I've thought about and learned about.
Awesome. So some of my reflections were, and I mentioned some of these, someone else said this in the notes, meeting teams where they're at. We've learned not to suggest or show tools that teams may not have access to, but instead focus on what they have available in their districts to start with and build from there. And then also when delivering UDL professional development, we've tried to increase our use of hands-on time for tool exploration with guidance, and also allow adequate time for reflection to get participants more engaged. I think the UDL menus might be a good tool to try that out, or a version of that in your district. And then the goals that I was setting for myself is to provide multiple options for access to professional development content. So especially now that we can't do any live in-person sessions, also have online sessions, recorded webinars, on-demand tutorials, and like I mentioned, the latest need is there's all this great recorded stuff, but how can we give teachers an opportunity to earn clock hours and show what they know to get those? And then finally, providing more coaching, follow-up, and training after initial consultations and training. So we do a lot of consultation through SETC, and we're trying to get better at follow-up so that, how did that go? What else would you like to try? What more do you need help with? So those are my thoughts.
And then circling back around to the micro interactions. If we think of that Freeman experience, that happened because we were sitting around a table at a conference and started talking and having these little interactions and got excited about an idea. And same with the things that Rose shared. I get to hear some of the stories behind that, how those things evolve, and they happen by those little interactions every day and a little idea sparking here or there. So it's great to have the support of administrators, district leaders, and initiatives from a district level, but then also those interactions of teams directing their own learning, collaborating, because it's not just about having a top-down experience, but by all of us and our interactions and our ideas, sharing those and moving this UDL implementation forward.
So we wanted to give you a chance to have questions and answers. And like we said, we want you to be able to talk to each other too. So if something that you saw on the Padlet struck you and you wanted to ask somebody to talk about it further, I'll pull that back up. And I think